What's up, flappers? So I have reviewed many accounts so far and have helped dozens of people beat obstacles through the game with resources they already have, but I am just one person. There's no way I can get to each and every one of you, and nowadays these comments are piling up in my videos asking me, is this team good? How should I build this team? I'm stuck doing this. What should I do? Right? And of course, there is a great saying that goes something like this: instead of giving you a fish, why don't I teach you how to fish? I think that's how it kind of went, so I'm just paraphrasing, but you get the idea. Today I am starting a new series which will likely be split into parts where I show you all how to properly build your teams to bring more efficiency out of the units and resources that you already have. Remember, to some of you this may be old information, but through my comment section I see way too many people who are confused with all of this and are constantly asking for help. But this still should help out some old players as well, as I know some players whom are AR 50 plus and still struggling with certain walls of content in the game, such as Abyss Floor 11 Chamber 2. So I hope this will clear things up for you all, and for veterans, please look to the comments to help people if they do have questions. Now let's start at the very beginning. When you are building any team, you have to understand the 4 basic roles of the game, and this goes the same whether you are watching my team guide videos or other content creators. We are all referring to them as the main DPS, the support DPS, healer, and finally support. Immediately we have to clear up something here that people often get confused about. Support DPS and support are 2 different roles. Just because some characters work great in the support DPS role does not make them immediately viable in the support role. I will go over this more in detail later on in the video, as this is usually where I see people make the biggest mistake. Now let's start in the main DPS role. The character you select for this role usually are going to be on field most often. If I were to have to break down field time presence, generally you want around 40% main DPS, 30% support DPS, 15% healer, and 15% support. Usually it looks something like this, although the ratio can change to 40% main DPS, 40% support DPS, and then 10% each for healer and support. Now remember, this is just a rough skeleton of how normal teams end up functioning like. You of course have exceptions to this rule, such as, let's say, a Razor team, where you have 80% main DPS and maybe 5% for each of the other roles. This is because certain characters in the game are designed to take up the mantle and put their teams on their backs to get the job done. Oftentimes, these characters have powerful skills that deactivates when they are switched out, which, if mistimed, can hurt your overall DPS by a lot. So oftentimes when you are struggling to clear content, it may be because you are playing your team inefficiently, causing you to lose out on a lot of damage. So with that explained, let's go into characters that fit the main DPS role. One of the biggest traits to have as the main DPS is to have great sustained damage output, either through normal attacks or skills. The unit you choose to be your main DPS has to be able to fill every moment of field time with good damage output. Now this is comparative, meaning you have to compare characters with each other for reference, because I can easily take my Sucrose out as main DPS, Razor support DPS, Xingqiu healer, and Hu Tao support, and can say, well, Sucrose can fill every second with DPS as long as I'm auto attacking. Xingqiu can heal, right? Razor can come out and damage as well, and I can use Hu Tao's burst to support with more damage. While you will not be wrong in this case, you are playing the team extremely inefficiently. And while this example here is an exaggeration, oftentimes when I am reviewing accounts, it's problems like this that prevents people from progressing further in the game, but it's very minuscule and it's very difficult to spot when all it takes is maybe to switch one character out and bring someone else in to completely change the team synergy, which ultimately can be the difference between clearing a stage in the Spiral Abyss and not clearing a stage. In future videos of this series, I will go much more in depth into breaking down very specific team comps, but in today's videos, let's just move on to the next role, which would be the support DPS. Now, this is a role that is more complicated than the main DPS, as it's easy to think as long as they do damage, then they can be a support DPS, because I will use them when my main DPS is in CD. A good example is our Hydro Husbando Childe. So if Childe is your main DPS, does that make let's say someone like Razor, a good support DPS. While yes, Razor works here, but he is far from an optimal support DPS to someone like Childe. To some people watching, this can be very complicated to answer, so in simple terms, it's because there's nothing Razor offers for the team when he is off field. This is a very oversimplified way to tell whether someone is good as a support DPS or not, but for now, just remember, a good support DPS should not only have consistent on-field DPS, but as well as off-field DPS. There are far less S-tier support DPS in the game than there are main DPS or just supports in the game. The support DPS role isn't a flashy one, it's often overshadowed by your main DPS and even supports. But a great support DPS is the backbone of every team. Some great choices in the game right now for support DPS are Xingqiu, Albedo, Fischl, Xiangling, Childe, Beidou, Aya, because all of these characters have certain ways to benefit the team even when they are off field, and some more than others. Remember, DPS stands for damage per second, not damage per second that you are doing damage. No. Every single second there should be damage being dealt, and if there is a unit on your team that has no way of contributing damage while being off field, then you should be finding a unit that can contribute. And that is one of the biggest mistakes I see people making when building their teams. That is, they are not finding characters to support their team while being off field. So now let's move on and into the healer role. This role is currently dominated by two units, being Bennett and Diona. While Qiqi and Jean are the best healers in the game for raw healing, they are units that are 1, inaccessible to most players, and 2, have limited off-field presence. Unlike when Genshin Impact was just released, healers are expected to bring more to the table now than just healing. For Bennett, he offers to heal and buff team damage. Diona offers shields, both of which follows a simple rule: you either kill your enemies before they can kill you with Bennett, or make it so it's much harder for opponents to kill you. In Bennett's case, the best CC in the game is just death, and for Diona, the best offense is a solid defense. While healers like Barbara are good, she fails to do more than just healing, and that's what makes her fall off in efficiency as we tackle more difficult content. And for pseudo healers like Noelle and Xingqiu, as you get deeper into the game and find that you are completely outscaling the content, you can completely rid the need of healers, and pseudo healers in that case would work great, but very few people are even at that stage, and oftentimes it does require high constellations on 5-star units, so most people don't need to worry about having just pseudo healers in their team for the meantime. Finally, we have the support role. This role is meant for units in the game that have the highest off-field presence. They should take up very small portions of your field time and oftentimes have insane field presence with very limited time they get. Supports differ the biggest from support DPS in that they don't spend much time on the field, and oftentimes you switch to supports to either get a huge burst of damage, utility skills, reapplying buffs, or skills to facilitate your team. So characters that suit this role would be Venti, Zhongli, Fischl, Xiangling, even Xinyan, Sucrose, Rosaria, right? All these units work really well in this role. Now, with all this said, usually you won't need to care about your teams, and I'm sure even bossing, it doesn't matter as much as long as you are outscaling the content, which most of you would be. But for the Spiral Abyss, you often find that you need to squeeze every drop of power from your team and team synergy to progress. Because the game requires you to have 8 unit build, you quickly realize that matching the right units with each other becomes more essential to progressing. But I know I've rambled on long enough. This is the bare bone structure and ideas when it comes to main DPS, support DPS, healer, and supports in the game. And this is where I will leave it for today's video. But join me again in tomorrow's video where we will continue diving deeper into the intricacies of team building and even some demos of teams that you should be looking to build for free-to-play players. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss that. I'll see you all in tomorrow's video. So until then, stay safe and peace.